Nobody hears me break. Smile like I'm surviving while my whole world starts to shake. I got good at saying I'm okay, with tears I never let escape. You left and I stayed breathing, but I haven't been the same. Some pain is loud, some pain is quiet. Mine learned how to hide and live inside it. I learned to cry in silence, to fall apart alone, to carry all this hurt and never let it show. You left me with a storm I had to hold inside. Now every night I drown in tears I never cried. I learned to cry in silence after you said goodbye. I still go through the motions, still wake up, still make the bed, still answer like I'm fine, while your voice lives in my head. No one sees the way I ache, how much of me you took away. I wear a calm face in the light, then break when night turns gray. Some wounds don't bleed, they just keep burning. Every sleepless night feels like you're turning. I learned to cry in silence, to fall apart alone, to carry all this hurt and never let it show. You left me with a storm I had to hold inside. Now every night I drown in tears I never cried. I learned to cry in silence after you said goodbye. I wish I knew how not to care, how not to look for you everywhere, how not to miss what used to be, how not to lose what's left of me. But grief is just love with nowhere to go, and mine still lives in the space you left below. I learned to cry in silence, to break behind closed doors, to live with all the words we never said before. You left me with a storm still raging in my chest, and now I lie awake with your ghost inside my breath. I learned to cry in silence and call it healing instead. I learned to cry in silence so no one sees how much you left in me. You didn't leave in anger, you didn't slam the door. You just got quiet slowly till I couldn't hear you anymore. No cruel words to haunt me, no shattered glass on the floor. Just your love turning colder than it ever was before. I kept waiting for a reason, for a fight, for something clear. But pain is harder to survive when no one disappears. You were still beside me, but already gone. And I was still in love when you were moving on. You left so gently it hurt more. No goodbye, no war, just silence filling every room, like love had died too soon. You let me down so carefully, I almost called it mercy. But losing you that quietly was its own kind of cruelty. You left so gently, it hurt more. You still kissed me in the morning, still reached for me at night. But somewhere in between, you stopped holding me that tight. We looked like we were fine to anyone outside, but love was fading in your eyes, while mine still tried to fight. I was loving for the both of us. You were learning how to leave, and I kept holding tighter to what you didn't believe. I felt your heart go distant long before you spoke, and I kept calling it a phase while everything was broke. You left so gently it hurt more. No goodbye, no war, just silence filling every room, like love had died too soon. You let me down so carefully, I almost called it mercy. But losing you that quietly was its own kind of cruelty. You left so gently, it hurt more. I wish you would have shattered me instead of fading piece by piece. A clean break would have hurt less than this slow and silent grief. You didn't have to say it, I felt it in your touch. The cruelest kind of leaving is when they stay, but stop loving you enough. You left so gently it hurt more. No ending I could mourn, just the ghost of who we were, still breathing in these walls. You let me down so carefully and called it loving me, but losing you that quietly was the loudest kind of grief. You left so gently, and it ruined me. You left so softly, I didn't hear my heart break until it was too late. I learned the sound of your distance before I learned the shape of goodbye. How love can still be in the room and never meet your eyes. You started leaving in small ways, in pauses, in delayed replies, and all the tenderness you gave with one foot out of sight. I felt the weather in your silence, the cold before the storm. Still I folded myself around it and called the ache our normal. I kept mistaking almost for enough to hold. I kept calling something dying a love gone cold. I made a home in your leaving, built my peace around your doubts, turned your distance into patience, turned your silence into hope. Somehow I learned to live on little, on maybe, almost please. And the loneliest thing I've ever done was make a home in being unseen. I made a home in your leaving. Became fluent in your absence and what your quiet meant, how to read the space between us. Like a punishment I spent, I lowered every need I had until it fits your hands. Trim my heart to something smaller just to match your half-made plans. I called it love to wait that long, to starve and still believe. But hunger starts to look like faith when all you do is need. I wore your leaving like a second skin and called it love because I didn't know where I ended. I made a home in your leaving, built my peace around your doubt, turned your distance into patience, turned your silence into hope. Somehow I learned to live on little, on maybe, almost please. And the loneliest thing I've ever done was make a home in being unseen. I made a home in your leaving. There's a kind of grief that settles in, not loud enough to name, just the slow collapse of needing more from someone who won't change. And maybe what still haunts me is not that you withdrew, it's how long I kept decorating the emptiness in you. I made a home in your leaving, but I won't live there now. I won't turn scraps into salvation or silence into vows. I know what love should feel like, and it does not beg to be seen. So I'll stop making homes in people who make homes in leaving me I noticed it in little things, the way you stopped looking back, how my name became too heavy, how your voice began to crack. You used to reach without thinking, now even touch felt forced. I was standing in the same love while you were drifting off course. I kept shrinking to fit your silence, making less of what I need, trying not to be too much while you became less of we. I bent until I almost broke, just to be the one you'd hold. I became easy to leave, easy to lose, easy to love, until you had to choose. I made myself smaller so you'd have room to stay, and somewhere in that losing I became easy to walk away. You let go so lightly, like I meant nothing to breathe. And the hardest part to live with is how easy I became to leave. I learned your moods like weather, how to speak when not to speak, how to carry all the tension, how to love what made me weak. I called it understanding, but it was fear dressed up as care. I kept cutting parts of me off just to keep you there. And maybe that's what broke me, not just that you let me go, but how much of myself I gave to make it hurt less when you did so. I disappeared in loving you before you ever left me too. I became easy to leave, easy to lose, easy to love, until you had to choose. I made myself smaller so you'd have room to stay, and somewhere in that losing I became easy to walk away. You let go so lightly, like I meant nothing to breathe. And the hardest part to live with is how easy I became to leave. I thought love meant sacrifice, I didn't know it came with this, the slow erasing of myself just to be someone you'd miss. But love should never ask you to vanish to be seen, and I was fading in your hands long before you left me. I became easy to leave, but that was never love. If I had to lose myself just to be enough, I made myself smaller. Now I'm learning how to breathe, and the saddest thing you taught me is how easy I can be to leave. But the strongest thing I've learned is I won't do that to me again. I became easy to leave, never again. kept your side of the bed untouched, like love might find its way back home. Kept talking to the shape you left, like silence might return your tone. I wore your absence like a habit, learned to breathe around the ache, called it healing in the daylight, then unraveled when awake. I knew the ending long before I let myself admit it true. But hope is cruel in quiet hearts, it makes a fool of what we knew. I should have left when love went dim, but I kept lighting candles for what was already ending. I kept loving you past the end, past the silence, past the bend, past the night you stopped reaching back, past the slow and final crack. I kept loving what was gone, kept calling ashes fire, and the saddest thing I've ever done was make loss feel like desire. I kept loving you past the end. I memorized your leaving slowly, every cold a kind of touch, how your voice could still say stay without ever meaning much. I kept translating distance into something I could say, turned your absence into patience, turned my grief into a weight. I was faithful to a version of us you'd already outgrown, still pouring into open hands that never planned to hold. You had already gone in ways I couldn't name, and I was still there, trying to love you into change. I kept loving you past the end, past the silence, past the bend, past the night you stopped reaching back, past the slow and final crack. I kept loving what was gone, kept calling ashes fire, and the saddest thing I've ever done was make loss feel like desire. I kept loving you past the end. There's a grief that has no funeral, no clean goodbye to mourn, just the quiet work of waking up and finding what's not there anymore. And maybe that's what broke me most, not that you left, but that I stayed long after love did. I kept loving you past the end, past what shattered, past pretend, past the place where we were done, past the death of what we'd been. I kept loving like it could undo all the time destroyed, and the hardest thing I've had to learn is love can stay when it's no longer returned. I kept loving you past the end, and that was how I finally let go. you like a promise, soft hands, open door. You felt like something gentle I had been waiting for. You spoke in ways that sounded like safety, like relief, and I let myself believe you the way lonely people believe. I gave you all my unguarded hearts, the ones I never showed, and you held them like they mattered until you let them go. I called it fate, I called it home, I didn't know. Some love just comes to leave you alone. You were the lesson I didn't want to learn, the kind of love that kisses soft then burns, the kind that teaches leaving by making staying hurt. You were the wound I named as love, the ache I kept mistaking for enough, and the hardest truth I've had to face is some people come to be the pain that changes us. You were the lesson I didn't want to learn. I kept defending all the ways you slowly let me down, calling distance just a phase while you stopped coming around. I made excuses for your silence, translated every doubt, turned your absence into reasons so I wouldn't have to walk out. I thought love meant enduring, I thought pain was part of trust. I didn't know some heartbreaks teach you what love never was. I called it hope, I called it grace, I didn't know. I was just learning how to break. You were the lesson I didn't want to learn, the kind of love that kisses soft then burns, the kind that teaches leaving by making staying hurt. You were the wound I named as love, the ache I kept mistaking for enough, and the hardest truth I've had to face is some people come to be the pain that changes us. You were the lesson I didn't want to learn. I hate that healing had to start with losing you. I hate that pain became the proof. I hate that loving you taught me what I should never call love again. But maybe that's the mercy in the end. You broke what needed breaking so I could stop mistaking being hurt for being whole. You were the lesson I didn't want to learn, but now I know not everything that feels deep is love. Not every almost forever was ever meant to last. You were the wound I had to name so I could finally stop calling it fate, and the hardest truth became the one that saved me. Some people come to break your heart and teach it better. You were the lesson, and I survived it. loved you in the quiet ways, and all the things I never said. And every time I bit my tongue to keep the peace instead. I loved you in the small details, the kind no one could see, in memorizing how you hurt and hiding what hurt me. I learned the shape of all your silence, what each distance meant. I could read the ache behind your eyes before a word was spent. I knew the weight you carried before you let it show. I loved you in the deepest ways you never cared to know. I loved you in all the ways you never noticed, in every little ache I kept hidden in my chest, in every time I chose your heart while mine went unattended. I gave you love in quiet forms you barely turned to see, and the cruelest kind of heartbreak is how invisible I learned to be. I loved you in all the ways you never noticed. I loved you in my patience, in every time I stayed, in every piece of me I bent so you would not pull away. I loved you in the listening, in all the space I gave, in carrying your storms for you while mine were left to rage. I made a home inside your sadness, tried to warm what had gone cold, and called it love when all it was me begging not to be alone. I poured myself so gently into hands that barely held, and called it love while losing me felt easier to sell. I loved you in all the ways you never noticed, in every little ache I kept hidden in my chest, in every time I chose your heart while mine went unattended. I gave you love in quiet forms you barely turned to see, and the cruelest kind of heartbreak is how invisible I learned to be. I loved you in all the ways you never noticed. Maybe love that whispers is too easy to ignore. Maybe I gave too softly to someone who wanted more. Or maybe I was only real when I was needed, not when seen. And that's the kind of pain that stays in everything. I loved you in all the ways you never noticed, in all the parts of me I slowly gave away, in every silent sacrifice you never thought to name. I gave you love so carefully you almost never knew. was easy to overlook, but never hard to love. I miss the way you used to laugh before your love grew tired, before your hands forgot my skin, before your heart retired. I miss the way you said my name like it meant something warm, before your voice turned unfamiliar, before love lost its form. I keep reaching for a version of you I cannot find, a memory with your face, but not the one who left behind. And that's what hurts the most, not that you're gone, but that you changed while I held on. I miss someone who doesn't exist anymore, someone who used to love me like before. Your face is still the same, but your heart closed every door. And I'm grieving someone breathing, standing right outside my reach. You didn't die, you just became someone I could never keep. I miss someone who doesn't exist anymore. I still talk to who you were in old pictures and old songs, like maybe if I love that version hard enough, it'll prove me wrong. But people leave in stranger ways. Sometimes they never go, sometimes they stay and slowly turn into someone you don't know. And that kind of loss is different. There's no grave, no final scene, just a person standing in front of you who no longer feels like we. You didn't vanish, you just changed shape, and I kept loving what you stopped being. I miss someone who doesn't exist anymore, someone who used to love me like before. Your face is still the same, but your heart closed every door. And I'm grieving someone breathing, standing right outside my reach. You didn't die, you just became someone I could never keep. I miss someone who doesn't exist anymore. How do I mourn someone still alive? How do I bury what never really died? You're still here somewhere, just not the way you were. And that's the kind of heartbreak no one warns you of first. I miss someone who doesn't exist anymore. And that's the kind of pain there's no cure for. Your eyes still meet mine, but they don't look like yours. And I'm grieving someone breathing, but the you I loved is gone.
I was the one who stayed awake, holding up what we became, patching holes you never saw, still calling it by love's name. I learned how to hold a silence like it wouldn't cave me in, how to keep a room from breaking with a smile stretched paper thin. You grew lighter in my hands while I grew harder to survive. I was keeping both our hearts alive while mine forgot its right. I thought if I loved enough it could outlive the wait. I didn't know one heart alone could never make two stay. Past the warning, kept the light inside the house. I was faithful to the falling, loyal to what we had been, and the heaviest thing I ever held was loving you alone in it. I carried us until it broke me. Made excuses for your absence, turned your distance into stray, called you leaving just a season while it settled into change. I kept reaching for your effort, found my own hand every time. Still I called it almost healing, still I begged the cracks for time. There is a grief in that arrives too late to name, when you realize what you carry never meant to do the same. I was building with bare hands what you were willing to undo, and that is how I learned love can fail inside of truth. I carried us until it broke me, held the line until my hands gave out, kept us breathing past the warning, kept the light inside the house. I was faithful to the falling, loyal to what we had been, and the heaviest thing I ever held was loving you alone in it. I carried us until it broke me. No one tells you how exhausting it is to be the reason something lasts, to be the only one still reaching for a future leaving fast. And maybe what still hurts the most is not that you let go, it's how long I called it love, to carry what would not be held. I carried us until it broke me, until the weight became my name, until I could not tell the difference between devotion and pain. I
things don't fall apart, they're carried too long. I saw your name light up my screen, but it was just a memory. My fingers froze above the keys, like you were still a part of me. I started typing, how have you been? Then deleted it again, 'cause I don't know who you are now, and I don't know where to begin. It's crazy how a simple line can pull me back in time. I almost texted you again tonight, almost told you that I'm not alright, almost asked if you still think of me, or if you're finally free. I almost said I miss your voice, but loving you's not my choice. And every word I never send is me trying to heal again. I almost texted you again. I still remember what you'd say when I was scared you'd walk away. You promised me you'd always stay. Funny how that changed. I read our old conversations slow, like there's something I don't know. But all I find between the lines is a love that couldn't grow. I keep fighting with my mind, leaving you behind. I almost texted you again tonight, almost told you that I'm not alright, almost asked if you still think of me, or if you're finally free. I almost said I miss your voice, but loving you's not my choice. And every word I never send is me trying to heal again. I almost texted you again. If I press send, will it bring you back, or just reopen everything we lack? 'Cause every time I think I'm strong, I realize I've been holding on. I almost texted you again tonight, but I chose to let you out my life, even though it still hurts to breathe. I'm learning how to leave. I almost said I still need you, but I know that's not the truth. And every word I never send is me loving myself again. I almost texted you again. I almost did, but this time I didn't.